Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Game Chat. It's been a while since I've done one of these. I've been busy. I'm in a new house now, so I apologize if it's a little echoey. I am getting some soundproofing foam that will be here next week. Until then, let's discuss the newest, dumbest gaming controversy, which brings me kind of to an entire point of more so stop comparing games to each other, but let's get into that later. So, the new controversy is Lawbreakers, a brand new arena-style shooter, has just released its open beta. And already people are starting to compare this game to Overwatch. Let me break down both games for you. By the way, there will be a comparison video in the background. Half of this video will be Overwatch. The other half will be Lawbreakers. I'd like you to try to see if you can figure out which one's which. And, I don't know if you can because they're so similar. Let's start with Lawbreakers. Lawbreakers is an arena-style shooter a la Quake and Unreal Tournament. It features several different characters, each with slightly different abilities. One team is called Law, the other team are the Breakers. Both teams have the same sets of heroes, however, they just have different skins because they're supposed to be different characters and have different voices and things like that, as well as their own different skins. Each character has two different abilities and one quote-unquote ultimate ability that allow them to progress throughout their tournament. The game modes consist of things such as capture the flag style modes, team deathmatch, frag ball, as well as a blitzball game mode, which is just a capture the ball to the enemy team mode. Overwatch is a team-based hero shooter in the arena genre, I guess, if by modern standards, which I will also get into later. It features 6-on-6 action and features neutral game modes or one-sided game modes, such as point control, payload push, or zone capture. Each hero on each team is the same, and you pick heroes based on each other's counters. Now, if you had never played either of those games or never seen them, you may think they sound sort of similar. And if you break anything down to its bare-bone components, things are going to sound similar. But let's get more into the specifics of each game. Let's start with Lawbreakers. Lawbreakers is a classic arena shooter. Now, let's talk about what that means, as the definition of an arena shooter has changed over the past 5 to 10 years. Back in the 90s and early 2000s, arena shooters were their own brand of game. This is why so many people nowadays are saying that Lawbreakers and, Quake Champions and things feels like old Quake and Unreal Tournament, and that's because it was its own genre. Back in the day, technology wasn't good enough to create, Call of Duty and Battlefield and these games of these huge scale, so they broke it down to simple, fast-paced gameplay that became the arena genre. Games were similar in the aspect that you were running around, picking up multiple weapons at a time, picking up armor and ammo from the ground, shooting, jumping around, the rocket jump came out of this, things like that. And each game had their own quirks. I mean, Unreal Tournament was one of the first to invent vehicles, and Lawbreakers has their own sort of abilities bringing to the game. But it is a classic arcade arena shooter, which is why I'm very annoyed when people say things like, oh, I don't like Toxic, which is another arena shooter that just recently launched, because it feels like Unreal Tournament, and the idea is it's supposed to. It's a genre of games that's sort of gone away nowadays. People are more into realistic shooters, and they're trying to bring it back in some aspect. And I think Lawbreakers does that well. This is not a Lawbreakers review video. Someone, I think, on this channel will do that eventually. But not me. At least not at this time. So, when I say it's an arena shooter, that's what I mean by it. Nowadays, arena means something different. Arena means battle on a fixed map. Things like Halo, Call of Duty, Destiny's Crucible mode, these are all arena shooters by today's standards. You're set into an enclosed space, there are places you can play and places you are not allowed to play, and you fight along these set strict paths of the map. Something like Battlefield is not considered an arena shooter. Yes, you could be like, oh, well, it's just a very large arena, which is what we don't really consider, but more so, Battlefield and games of that like allow you to go wherever. If I manage to get to the top of a building, I can stand there. In Halo or Call of Duty, there might be a ledge I can't get over, or a door I can't walk through, despite the fact that the map looks like it in the artistic style. Overwatch itself fits into the latter of these two descriptions. There are places on the map you're allowed to go and places you are not. You are fixed into this set map. Now, that is also true with games like Lawbreakers, and that's kind of where the term comes from, but by today's standards, the word just arena shooter does not necessarily describe the same type of game. So that brings me to Lawbreakers in depth itself. It's a very strict, old school arena shooter. This game doesn't allow you to pick up new weapons off the ground, and it doesn't allow you to pick up armor or anything, but it goes with a more character class choosing. Similar to Overwatch in that aspect, sure, but not really that much the same. Each classic character has their own set of abilities, health pools, strengths, and weaknesses, as well as weapons. They also have some sort of ultimate ability. Some characters, it is more like an ultimate, a very large, powerful thing that builds up over time, versus some other characters where it's just a third ability that they have. The game plays very much like old school Unreal Tournament or Quake, as the characters are moving at incredibly fast speeds, in some cases even flying around as the middle of the map features low gravity, and it's constant frag on frag, as well as neutral objective modes, such as grab the ball, take a core back to your base. I believe the full game will have, your basic team deathmatch modes and things like that, but that is the kind of game it is trying to be. It is a game genre that's dying off, and they're just trying to bring it back. Overwatch is an entirely different game. This is a hero shooter. It is based entirely on picking what hero, your team composition, how to work with the maps, your own playstyle, strengths and weaknesses. Characters are very well rounded in the fact that they have their own counters and their own abilities and strengths and things like that. In Lawbreakers, it doesn't matter. You can all pick the same character if you'd like, and you can still dominate the other team. The characters are more so just for fun, and while you can strategize, and I'm sure there are and will be pro teams or semi-pro teams that do real strategies, in the essence of the game, it doesn't really matter. Any character can be just as good as any other character, whereas in Overwatch, each character fulfills a specific role. Now, there are all sorts of, skills and things around doing different things with that role, but all in all, a character does what a character does, not necessarily something else. Also, it's very one-sided, usually. You have one team attacking, one team defending, there's the end of the game, with the exception of competitive, where you then switch sides and continue going. It's not based around just getting kills. It's not a traditional first-person shooter. A game like Overwatch wouldn't work well with a team deathmatch type game mode because everyone would just pick a high-health hero who doesn't die a whole lot and just gets some kills, versus trying to balance some skill and damage versus health versus healing versus all sorts of things. This ultimately brings me to my whole point. Games inherently aren't similar, and the Overwatch community, Overwatch is a great game, and I love it, and I'm great that the community is so big around it. But every game that comes out that's even remotely similar is compared as a copy of Overwatch. And it's happened several times. Paladins, those Chinese ripoffs, Lawbreakers, Battleborn. Now, in the case of the Chinese ripoffs, those actually are Overwatch ripoffs. I'm not saying that necessarily everything on that list is invalid to say that it's a ripoff, but like Battleborn, for example, is a MOBA, which have been around for a long time. If you want to even say even closely, tell me it's ripping off Smite or League of Legends. Don't tell me it's ripping off Overwatch. It's not doing either of those things, but if you're going to make that comparison. And if you want to play this card, then I can tell you Overwatch is a ripoff of Team Fortress and MOBAs in general. Team Fortress kind of pushed forward the whole team and hero shooter genre with even the exact same game modes: control capture, payload push, zone capture modes, things like that, as well as using abilities from games like MOBAs. Team Fortress 2 doesn't have ultimate abilities, but pretty much every single MOBA does, and things like that. And that's not to say that that's bad. No one said you can't borrow aspects from other games. Team Fortress was the first game to do that. That doesn't mean they didn't draw inspiration from other games. Everyone compares Zombies mode in Call of Duty to each other, like, Infinite Warfare Zombies is just a ripoff of Treyarch Zombies, which is a ripoff of a Flash game, if you want to start playing those cards. So just let games be games. If you really think a game is similar, like, I could see the argument for Paladins, and I'm not going to get into that in this video. Not only is it for another video, but that controversy is long since past. I can see that argument because it's similar gameplay with similar heroes, sometimes too similar. But Lawbreakers is entirely nothing like Overwatch and doesn't even play similarly. And if I were to break down any video game, I could make comparisons. Battlefield is a game where you play as a soldier and you can aim down sights and you shoot enemy teams. Call of Duty is a game where you play as a soldier and you aim down sight and you shoot enemy teams. But anyone who's played both those games would know they're nothing alike. So, I can make that comparison with anything. I could say GTA is a game where you get into a car and you drive really fast and race other players. Forza Horizon 3 is a game where you get into a car and drive really fast and race other players. Those games aren't even in the same genre, but I can make that comparison. So my whole point is just, games aren't automatically similar because they share a few aspects with each other. Games are similar when they actually start copying each other, but there are also different genres of games. A shooter game is most likely going to have aim down sights. It's what we expect nowadays. But does that mean that every game is ripping off, what was it? I think Medal of Honor was one of the first games to have aim down sights. So we'll just say, does that mean every single game is ripping off Medal of Honor? Does that mean every racing game is ripping off, like, F-Zero or whatever the first racing game was? No. They're a genre of games. Need for Speed is very much like Forza because you drive fast and race people. No, duh, it's a racing game. Need for Speed would be similar to Forza if you were upgrading your cars and, or if Forza, the cops suddenly came after you every 2 seconds and all this crazy stuff. Anyway, that's it for me. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see y'all later. Bye.